This is True North Story, the original podcast series. Learn, love, listen, live. With your hosts, Tama Fulton and John Hudson Messerall. Are you ready to discover your True North Story?
Tama was pointing out that you're our first True North Story podcast guest outside of the U.S., so how cool is that?
Oh, that is cool. And I'm like in the north. I feel like I'm in the North Pole right now. It's cold here, so.
Is it cold in Canada today, eh?
I didn't say that, did I?
No, I did.
Say a. This past week has been absolutely brutal, but today has been, I think it's 5 degrees Celsius, which is still too cold for me. I'm like Hawaii temperature kind of girl.
So if we asked you beach or mountains, you would pick beach?
Oh, in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Tama and I both grew up in Chicago, so we can share your pain. Maybe not to the extent that you have to experience cold weather, but let me just tell you something. Anyone who spent January in Chicago with the wind off the lake and the snow and the cold, it's pretty brutal.
Yes, it is.
So think about this. We're talking to Edmonton, Alberta, to Seattle, to Atlanta. Like, look at that triangle. Think about that triangle. Might make your head hurt.
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
Pretty amazing. We have just really been blessed, and we're super grateful that we've been given this platform, or that we're developing and building the platform to allow people to come and share their stories about what worked in their life or what helped them or what guided their journey towards trying to find a true North story in their own life and live that life. And so, we've identified 4 key areas: inspiration and encouragement, motivation, and hope. So when Tama brought your story to me, we both thought that you have a lot to talk about, and a lot of amazing things and a few sad things and some things you've had to overcome challenge-wise, and some amazing things to talk about, too, with your book and your film we'll get to. And so how about we just start with kind of a little bit about Alexis and your background and how you grew up and the foundation.
I grew up with parents who have a business and like really practical occupations and approach to life. And so, I kind of feel like I don't know where I came from half the time. Right from the beginning, like I remember setting up an art studio in my parents' basement, and I took myself very seriously back then. Like I was making art, and this was very important. And it evolved from that point of like being a kid. And I remember my parents being like, "Oh, you should be a lawyer. You should be a businesswoman. Go to get your business degree." And I just couldn't imagine doing anything but expressing this creativity and the joy that it brings me into putting that back into the world.
For us creative people, not all people understand that, what you just described, because different strokes for different folks, and there are analyticals and there are type A's, and there's all kinds of different people make the world go round. But the creative people, it's almost like a disease. It's like you have this ability inside of you, and you need to find an avenue to express it, and you want to be able to share it with the world and with people who can appreciate it, consume it. It sounds like your parents were a little bit more on the practical side.
Oh, absolutely. I still remember the first summer when I was doing my undergrad in fine art, and I sat down with my dad and I told him, okay, this summer I'm not going to get a traditional summer job. I'm going to work as an artist this summer. And did I hear about it? Like it was... Yeah, it was a little bit of a tense conversation, to put it the least. But I don't think I've really looked back since that point. And maybe it was the boldness of youth that helped me project myself down this path and stick with it for so long.
And then you went on to study outside of Boston at Cambridge. Did you study fine art there as well?
I studied a fine art of another kind. So my undergrad was in visual art, and my master's is in creative writing. And I've always been told, other people in creative fields, that, you have to choose. You're like, are you going to be a writer or are you going to be an artist? And even in the arts, are you going to be a painter? Are you going to be a photographer? And I personally have always bucked the idea that you must choose and do only one thing. I feel like in my life and my creative work that the writing, it feeds into my visual art and makes it better. And then the visual art seeps into my literary art and makes it that much more rich and visual and sensory. So I don't think anybody should have to choose. I think following your heart and letting your joy lead you, that might sound kind of abstract, but there's no prescribed way.
It's totally funny that you bring that up, because if there's two sayings that I've probably killed my co-host and business partner, Tama, here with more often than any other, is one, that the answer to all life questions can be found in the movies. And number two is what? Is that I can't be put in what?
A box.
Exactly. And that's what you just described. It's like we live in a society where everyone wants to understand you in one dimension. It's the most frustrating thing. It's like I'm an artist. I create, I write, I paint, I take pictures, I do all the... Well, no. How are you going to make a living? What's the one box? And that just frustrates me as a creative myself. And it's so funny that you just touched on that you were feeling that from other people. It's like, okay, well, is it going to be photography? Is it going to be writing? Is it going to be the stage? What is it? Which one are you going to pick? It doesn't necessarily have to work that way, right?
Exactly. Like one of my life mantras is be free. And sometimes that's going to look like one thing, and other times it's going to look like something different. But if I'm not authentic and like genuine with who I am, like the art form you choose matters less than like what you bring to it as a creative visionary type of thing. And I think that's where the power comes from. And even in today's day and age, there's so many mixed media, multimedia presentations of creativity and even business. And so I think it's something to be embraced and not feared and not rejected in our day and age.
You left school and you took to being your own person and your own creative and being a freelancer. But did it circle back and you started writing for other people? Were you writing for businesses? How did that manifest itself?
I feel like I've been freelancing since I was in high school. If there's an opportunity that comes up, I jump at it. And I've written for so many women's magazines and parenting magazines, especially being a woman and a parent myself, just opening up that experience and connecting with like other like-minded people and sharing stories. And that's really at the heart of everything I feel like I try to put out there in the world, is the power and impact that being vulnerable with our stories, our life experiences. It's amazing how you can connect with other people. The struggles you have been through can make a difference in other people's lives. And so, my art, that's kind of like the underlying theme, this of storytelling and putting a visual or a word to something that's an experience that might not be explored or taboo, something that's taboo in our culture.
I'm letting all of this soak in, and I love the way you communicate, because it's in visceral terms that you can take the word and you can let it soak in, and it has an emotional quotient or meaning to it. And that is like really important, because so much of what is cutting through the noise in content creation today is content that resonates on an emotional level with an audience that maybe has experienced similar things as you or can identify with your situation because they were in a similar situation. Talk a little bit about how you have found an audience base within circumstances in your own life. Are there emotional things that, as a parent, for example, that you're able to write about that resonate with other parents, or as a woman that resonates with other women that go, oh yeah, dating is crazy, or marriage is crazy, and is that kind of helped shape your voice from a content creation standpoint?
Absolutely. I feel that, myself, I feel like I'm not weird enough to be the stereotypical artist, and I'm too normal to be amongst regular people. That puts me in a beautiful place where I can speak to both groups of people. And in my writing, I definitely love writing about being a woman and a mother and trying to also be creative. I feel that if I was a man, like I look at my husband, and he goes to work and he is in his zone. He doesn't have to worry about the kids all day, feeding people and, like all these little things. In my sphere, I have so many hats and aprons and my paint apron and just like all the different personas that
fragmented. Your attention is just like in a million different places.
But I feel like in one way that's a distraction for sometimes getting things done, but in another way, being a mom and an artist and a writer, I feel like I have the best job in the entire world because I can have all of the above. For myself, we've come up with this scenario where we've actually just recently hired a nanny, and I'm in the house and the kids are in the house, and if I close the office door, it means I'm doing an amazing podcast like with you guys or something, or I can be down in the art studio and painting, and the kids are just climbing around, and then the nanny will play with them, and then she'll help me feed. And so it's cool to create this symbiosis of all these different parts of my life that I think a lot of times women feel like they have to choose. I have to choose to be a stay-at-home mom, or I have to choose to be a working mom. And with each one of those, there's sacrifices. But, whatever you decide to do is going to be right for you. But for me, I've really tried to blend everything together, and I feel so grateful and fortunate. So this is the kind of thing that I love writing about and sharing this crazy adventure of following my passions and my dreams while also snuggling my babies close to me as much as I possibly can.
It sounds like Alexis has this idyllic life and she's found the man of her dreams and she's building a family and she's doing her art, and that was going really well for you. And then you had something that was unexpected and I imagine extremely painful and tragic happen within your family. And that propelled you into writing this beautiful book to not only, I think, probably be a cathartic process for you in your own grief, but also to help others. So can you kind of tell about the story behind the book and then the process of you wanting to write?
I had one child, my daughter Hannah. She was about 1 year old. And my husband and I were like, man, this is amazing. We love being parents. Let's do this again. And, all the beautiful naivety of life, we just were in the flow, right? Working, having a little kid at home, baby on the way. And then one day we got the news that my child, who I was about 25 weeks pregnant at that point, had a large tumor around his heart. And they basically predicted he would be stillborn, and that was really the moment where the hammer dropped, and I was all the little beautiful dreams I had for my life and the plan I had moving forward, everything was thrown off its axis, and my world came crumbling down. It sounds cliche, but it just, in that instant, everything changed for me, and I can never go back. From that point on, my baby, who we named Zachary, he held on, and he was born at 30 weeks, and he lived a few minutes, which to me is one of the greatest gifts I'll ever be able to have in my entire life. So he moved a little bit in my arms. He never opened his eyes. He never cried. And he passed away just a few minutes after he entered the world. In those moments, they went so slow. Those moments were so slow and precious, and the only place I wanted to be was in that hospital room. And then afterwards, the fallout from devastation of the loss of our future together, it rippled into every facet of our lives, from the struggle of marriage and male-female grief afterwards, the struggle of identity as women who lose a child. So many people experience miscarriage and stillbirth. Even SIDS is the leading cause of death in children under a year old in the United States. People who have experienced this, you feel like your body has failed you, and you ask, why me? All the questions that probe at faith and our existence and why are we here in the world. So it was profound devastation after that. And being an artist and a writer, you'd think maybe my first instinct would be to use those creative gifts, but I couldn't write. I couldn't paint. It was almost as if those things were dangerous because I knew that they would unlock the grief, the deep sorrow that I was feeling. And so the first year after Zachary died, I call it my year of distraction because I did basically everything besides focus on that loss, and took my living child, to every possible child education and fitness class, swimming lessons, and I did commercial photography, and I just got so busy so that I didn't have any space in my mind to even think about and process my loss. And it was only when I got pregnant again with my next child that I was like, holy smokes, if I don't deal with this grief, I'm going to carry it with me. And I envisioned giving birth to my next child and yet still having that monster of grief just clawing at me. It was just, I realized I had better deal with it. And that's sort of where my book, Expecting Sunshine, was birthed itself.
Wow.
And grew out of that desire to pursue healing and make peace with my experience, and also just to reclaim the joy in my life, because loss, it often it'll rob you of your joy, and even to laugh sometimes feels like a betrayal of the love you have for that person that's no longer with you. So that's really where Expecting Sunshine began.
I love the title of your book, Alexis. Tell our audience about rainbow children.
I'm not sure where this term came from, but like a rainbow baby is the first child born after you've lost a child. And it's basically a symbolic statement that you've been through this horrific storm, a tsunami of emotion and loss and pain, and yet a rainbow comes and it shows you there's hope. Life will carry you forward, and there is hope and joy at the end. It's one of the most beautiful, exciting phrases. You Are My Sunshine is a song that was really, really powerful for me. It just lodged in my heart towards the birth of my child that I write about in my book. Somewhere Over the Rainbow is another song that just is really passionate for me, and that it expresses the love that I have and the joy that I now have with my 2 living children after Zachary passed away.
This is True North Story, the original podcast series. And now, back to the program.
What was your time and thought processes, and what were you going through emotionally between that time that you got that diagnosis for Zachary and when you got to hold him?
In that time, really, it was one of those times where everything is stripped back. We fuss and worry about so many things in life, but when you get a diagnosis that your child may not live, all the little petty things that we worry about and running around to activities and things, it all just gets pushed to the side. And it was a really challenging and also beautiful time where, my husband and I, we went to the hospital every day for the 5.5, 6 weeks leading up to Zachary's birth. So we would talk on the way to the hospital, and we would basically sit through ultrasounds every single day. They would do fetal echoes, which is an ultrasound just of Zachary's heart. They were trying to figure out if they could take this tumor off somehow, if surgery would work. They determined it would basically be like, cheese grating his heart and there would be nothing left. We tried different kinds of medication and it had adverse effects in me, which freaked out my husband. It was just a really trying time. It was also a time where we saw the real stick by you, ride or die kind of friends and family. Those people just came up beside us, and we had food delivered by friends and family every single day. And I really think that if it wasn't for the generosity and compassion of those people, we probably would have starved or ordered pizza every single meal, because it just, you can't cook. I joke that, we got 14 lasagnas and, it got us through 2 weeks, but it's the truth. And I think that, so while it was one of the most difficult, heartbreaking times, it showed us what we're made out of. It gave us the decision of what kind of people are we going to be in this moment. And it really has defined the trajectory of our family and our lives personally. Leading up to Zachary's passing, so I knew when I went into labor that I didn't know if he would be born alive. I didn't know if he did live, how long it would last, how many breaths he would be able to take. It was maybe one of the best tests of mindfulness, being present in that moment. And I really feel like I didn't hear anybody talking to me. I knew my mom was taking pictures. I didn't even hear the click of the camera. It was like time went half speed, and I just kissed my son on his forehead, and I rocked him, and I just held him to my chest and just took the deepest of breaths and felt his skin while it was still warm. And my husband carried him chest to chest, skin to skin, and he took him to the hospital window and sort of tilted him so he could look out and said, "I'll never forget this." He said, "This is the world." And it was just those most beautiful, savory moments that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
I'll never forget.
It's
That
so
is a powerful story. Yeah.
So powerful, Alexis.
You talked about the first year after losing Zachary, and you kind of were just filling up your plate with so much stuff that it was just you're blocking and tackling. When did the clouds kind of break, and in what shape or what manner did that kind of happen so that you could start to process? Was it the pregnancy of your next child that started to say, hey, I need to deal with this? How did that process work for you so that you could get back not only to writing and healing and moving beyond the loss, but yet also getting back to your artistic loves and drives and passions deep down inside?
Once I sort of committed my heart that I needed to take time to mourn, and so that was the decision that I made when I found out I was pregnant. Well, it was kind of funny. For the first few weeks after I found out I was pregnant again, I was elated, walking on cloud nine. I was so excited, and then the fear eventually crept in, and that's when it was like, okay. And so I actually I cleared my calendar of all work. I just stayed home with my daughter Hannah, and really the first thing that I started to do that was the first healing act, I feel like, was I started to make wood sculpture. And I'm not a sculptor. I've never taken that, I'm sure I played with Play-Doh and, here's a little dinosaur I've made out of Play-Doh, right? But that was kind of my extent of sculpture. But I had all these little wooden blocks, tiny little things, and I got wood glue, and I sat for hours, and I just glued these together, and they kind of looked like a wooden house of cards, like balancing house of cards. And some of them are really tall, like they even got to be like 4.5 feet tall, some of the largest ones.
Where were you finding the wood? Did this just all of a sudden you were like, I want to do this? Where did the desire come from to start working with wood sculptures?
Well, so at the time, I think that I had no clue what I was doing. I had this small amount of wood on hand, and I just started, and then I started to get more, and, being connected in the creative community, I had even some of my writer friends, like this one gentleman, he opened his trunk one day and there was like bags and bags full of like wood chips left over, like little, and really interesting different types of wood. I don't know if what he builds or whatever at his studio, but yeah, and he just gave me like bags and bags of different woods, and I just experimented. I even started using Jenga blocks, like wooden Jenga blocks.
Sure, the little game.
Yeah, and for me that was a symbolic act. Because, with Jenga, you build it up as high as it'll go, and then it crashes over. But the idea is you build it up again, and that really became symbolic. Like the artwork that I started to make in that time, I call it the quiet rebuild. And it's basically a picture of what it's like to rebuild your life after loss or hardship or any kind of experience that's deeply challenging. It just takes like a quiet resilience. And that's something that evolved for me. So it started with wood sculpture, and then I started to take large black and white photographs of strangers, people who I met through social media who heard about my project with the Quiet Rebuild and wanted to be a part of it. And so I photographed people who have other bereaved parents. I photographed people who have survived like unimaginable illnesses, people who have had addiction, mental health issues. And so it all started with this little act of, okay, I've got to surrender myself to this creativity as an outlet to just process this loss. And it really comes back to kind of like the left brain, right brain chemistry.
Right.
Our left logic brain, after loss or any kind of struggle, you ask, why me? Why did this happen? What could I have done differently? What did I do wrong? So it's just all these very logical thinking. And often my husband and I underwent 9 months of genetic testing afterwards to see if it was something that we caused or something in us, but it wasn't. The answer was randomness. And in our culture, I don't think we like randomness.
It is very difficult to understand that, isn't it? It wasn't anything expected or planned.
We hate that in our culture. But I think that's where the beauty of the right side of your brain comes in. It's our creativity, our intuition, our abstract thinking. It's our creative problem solving. And so really the beautiful part about what I did subconsciously, which is now what I hope to teach people to do consciously, is to engage that right side of the brain and just let go of all those why questions. And really, I felt like as I was just sitting there gluing pieces of wood together, I don't know, like it was a beautiful, almost spiritual experience where all these tight grips on my heart, and I just felt like, why is this happening? And like, I have no control. I can't change anything. It just became ease, and I was able to not happily accept, but accept and my experience and find joy and beauty in the areas that I could find those things. And really from there, that's where my memoir, Expecting Sunshine, came out, is that I wanted to sort of document what that experience was like using creativity for healing, and also just trying to be sane and not, lose my mind when I was expecting my next baby, because I think loss is starting to get talked about a little bit more, but what is not talked about is getting pregnant again. I remember all my family and friends being ecstatic when I announced, Erin and I are expecting our next baby. They kind of felt relief, like, oh, she's moving on, she's moving forward. But really, it was the most terrifying, stressful, worrisome 9 months of my life. And I was kind of like, why is nobody talking about this? This is the most challenging kind of job ever.
Because they're all holding their breath. If you think about it, it's a weird thing that happens when they experience tragedy. It's like the fear that it could happen again. So if we don't talk about it, it's like the elephant is in the room, but we're not going to acknowledge the elephant.
If there's an elephant in the room, like people better be talking about it, right? Or else somebody's going to get stepped on.
Exactly.
I agree with you.
Alexis, I was just thinking about your silent rebuild, and I love that. For some reason in my head, I visualize Dr. Seuss-looking houses that you were building. These new homes were a little bit off-center or off-kilter, but they stuck together. And even though they might have looked a little bit odd or different, they worked, and they were kind of beautiful in their own flawed ways.
No, that's absolutely right. Like it almost looks like you carved away at a tree, because they all kind of like grow up, and I anchored some on the base of a tree stump, and they just look like you've, carved away so precariously. And I've had people be like, how are these not falling over? And then I've transported some, and they've broken half, and I've had to like look at pictures and feel like, how did I put this together again? And I've got to start over. It's the quiet rebuild, like reenacting itself again and again. They're very quirky.
Tama and I have talked a lot about this, and there have been so many different themes that kind of transcend podcasts and people's individual journeys. One thing that keeps bubbling up that we both love and pour into is comebacks. And when I hear the quiet rebuild, I think about that. It's like a comeback from a setback or a challenge or something unexpected that you and your husband had to experience together, as well as your daughter, Hannah. And as a family unit and your extended family and friends, the loss of Zachary. And I think that there's beauty in that from a standpoint, and it doesn't have to be the physical loss of an individual child or loved one or spouse. It's just a really deep challenge that makes you question what is important and what does matter and why am I here. And I think people when you get to the other side, you live such a deeper, richer, more meaningful life for having gone through that experience. You talk about the moments, being present. I'm a huge Eckhart Tolle guy. It's just so amazing because I hear you using, like, you get it, the letting go. We don't control anything. Being present, being in the moment. Do you think that even though this was a horrific tragedy and it caused a lot of pain and a lot of suffering to a lot of people, that it strengthened you in a lot of ways once you worked through it?
Absolutely. I feel that while I would change this experience I've been through any day and bring my son back, I can't. And so I do look at it now, 6 years later, as one of the greatest gifts and transformational experiences that I've ever been through. And I often will, like, in my heart, just say, like, thank you to my son, because I feel like he's given me one of the best gifts. It's almost like I was asleep before in my life, and you take so many things for granted, and then after an experience that it just opens your eyes. Like, I'm a new person, and I feel that I appreciate other people more, and I'm more passionate about my work, and I love my children like a million times deeper. Like, it just, as a whole person, they call it the new normal after you've been through a hard situation and you've come out on the other side. They call it new normal, and you can never go back to your old normal. You're this new person, you're living this new life. And I think that's one of the most beautiful analogies. And really, at the end of the day, I feel like my voice as an artist and a writer has been brought to life, has grown up through this experience. And I am so passionate about connecting with other people who have experienced loss or any kind of challenge, because I feel that there's power in sharing our stories, that we can share each other's burdens, carry people forward when they might be stuck in grief in the situation. I feel like there's amazing potential that can come out of these sort of situations where I still feel my son alive in my life through the love I have for him, through the way we celebrate him as family. But I feel that I'm a better person. And that's not something to be discounted.
That's amazing, Alexis. I want to hear about the film you and your husband have been working on in conjunction with your book, Expecting Sunshine. Can you tell a little bit about what you've been doing in that regard?
My memoir follows my first pregnancy after loss, and the documentary follows my most recent pregnancy. My baby is now 1 year old. His name is Luca, and harkens back to my mixed media kind of approach to life. So the book is one thing. People who love reading will be able to connect. They'll be able to dig into this book. I believe it speaks to people who have lost a child, but also who have lost anyone or who've struggled and are looking for hope. But the film, what I really love about this is that it brings the story of the book and it puts visuals to it. So I have two little video clips from when Zachary was born. I actually capture him moving. I think it's my husband taking the video. And so we've included that. So it kind of tells the story of our family losing Zachary, having Eden, and then still being pregnant with Luca. It was still a terrifying time. And the film not only shares my experience, but we've also interviewed over 20 other bereaved parents, both men and women. We've interviewed bereavement grief author and public speaker Alan Wolfelt. We've just captured, impressions of nurses and like what their experiences like on the other side in caring for families who've gone through this. And then it also captures my sculptures and painting and like the whole creative approach and what that is like. It's just a really cool film, and it's artistic and beautiful. So we're still editing it right now, and we're just really hoping and looking forward to the day where we can share it and have so many people brought into this experience, even as just a memorial, a testimony of like the power of a mother and a father's love for their baby, because that lives on even after the child is no longer with us.
If people want to, Alexis, find out more about you, find out about your art, I know you do exhibits and maybe you even have art that you sell, but for sure to buy your book, how can people find you?
To find out about me and all the different kinds of artistic explorations I do, you can look at alexismariechute.com, last name spelled Chute. And also for everything Expecting Sunshine, the book and the film, expectingsunshine.com.
John and I feel so blessed to have had you as part of our True North Story podcast. Your story is compelling, and I just know that you and your family are thriving and are helping others and are continuing to speak hope into people's lives. And I thank you for sharing your True North story.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you so much. We love talking with other creatives, and your story was really amazing. And I think it's going to resonate very powerfully with our audience, and we're appreciative. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for listening to True North Story, the series. Follow us on Twitter @True North Story, and tune in next time for another True North Story.